that so I can see what's happening here. And let me angle this.
Is Vermont time like 15-minute window?
Mm-hmm.
Or, because
Not for me,
in Jersey, no one ever shows up on time,
Yeah.
ever. So, I think we start our hellos, and then, someone comes in, that's great. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, hi guys, I'm Marina. Thank you guys so much for being here. All the way from New Jersey, but I know Christine for a very, very long time. Today, 12 years? Today, 12-year anniversary?
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, exactly 12 years, yeah.
So yeah. Christine and I go way back from our first salon. We were like 20, I was 25, Christine is younger. We first met, and then Christine moved to New York, and so we have this whole relationship and whole history. So it's exciting for me to be here to see the Vermont side of her and the more chill side, but then of course, we have, the cause, the reason why we're here. So I definitely thank you so much for being here, for being a model. This will be one class if I had to cut doll heads, so I appreciate that. And thank you guys for supporting, of course. What's your names?
I'm Tia.
Tia, okay, nice to meet you.
I'm Lindsay, nice to meet you.
Okay, nice to meet you. And we have Sarah. Okay. So let's start with consultation. I think consultations are a really, really big part of haircutting. I used to specialize in haircutting for I'm going to say the first 4 years of my career. I worked in a salon. We only departmentalized, so you chose whatever you wanted and you had to stick with it, and there's no ifs and buts. And then after I was at that salon, I decided that I think it would be important for me to know the other aspects of the color. I find that consultation, and if we miss a haircut, it's most likely because the communication wasn't there. Whether it was because we didn't listen, or it could be because we just put our own thoughts, like, oh, I think this person would look amazing with a specific look, and whatever she's saying did not, translate in my head. So Sarah and I already had a consultation just so that I'm a little bit more prepared of what she's looking for, especially because there's no mirror. It's hard to kind of pay attention to the face shape. So whenever a client comes in, I always say, hi, nice to meet you, I'm Marina. I'll be doing the haircut today. Is there anything specific you like to do? At that point, sort of start touching the hair because I want to feel their head shape. I want to feel how much hair they have. In my mind, I already know what I can't do because either it's the face shape, the head shape, the amount of hair that they have, the texture of the hair that they have. So if someone came in and said, I want a French bob of this length, that hair is going to expand quite a bit in the areas that are going to be the widest, and it's not going to be the most flattering shape. So if someone comes in and says something specific, then I can talk them out of it or talk them into something that I think will be more flattering. If a client comes in and says, I don't know, which I find is the hardest, because you're just like, well, do you want like a trim, or you want me to cut all your hair off? Give me like a little, some kind of direction. So when I don't know, then I dig deeper. Why don't you know? You don't know because you're on the fence. Did you have a bad experience? Are you nervous about cutting hair? So that's when I start to point out areas that I like in the haircut and parts that I really dislike about the haircut. And I think that kind of gives me direction on where I could go. Okay, well, how do you feel about the overall length? Do you love where this is falling? And the face expression says it all. No, not really. Well, how do you feel about this length? So instead of me digging deep and like, well, you gotta tell me, because if you don't tell me, how am I supposed to make you happy, right? I'm gonna show what I think will look flattering on my client. So I think a length like this would look really good, or a length like this, maybe some shorter pieces here, and then I start showing that shape and that silhouette without them even have to talking, and then they're going to tell you exactly what they like and what they don't like when they see it in the mirror. So Sarah and I discussed that the one thing that she said, she does not want an undercut. And I said, you have a lot of hair back here, that's why you probably have had undercuts before. And so then she's like, well, maybe, you know, if I did have an undercut, because she knows she enjoyed it, but it's probably behind me and to keep up with it. Not all the way around. So I said, well, what if we cut off all this length, but now the bottom is going to be really thick, because you can see how much weight we have here, and this how wide the silhouette here is, where her head shape, right, her head shape is quite perfect. So if I get rid of that weight, you can see that silhouette of the haircut sort of is going to come out much softer and much nicer and much more flattering for the rest of the body. So I said, what if we did a really soft undercut here, which is not necessarily disconnection, but there will be parts that will be disconnected, and that will be to collapse the overall silhouette and the shape of the haircut, which should be really soft and pretty and low maintenance. She doesn't have to worry about keeping up with it. And that's how you convince clients. Sarah was like, no problem, sounds good. Now, I really enjoyed these front pieces. With the cowlick, I know for Sarah to blow dry this would become really high maintenance if we did something really heavy on her forehead. So if we did something a little bit softer, maybe to here, so that it falls just below the cheekbone, this will be really flattering, really pretty, and then she could just go on 3 months without cutting it. So we discussed that maybe potentially getting rid of the length about the shoulder will get rid of all these little stragglers in here and all this extra length that doesn't really do anything because it's sitting on the shoulder. Now, speaking from the, what's the word, not perspective, the proportions, head shape, hair, and then shoulders. If hair lays on the shoulders, it creates weight from here to wider and hits the shoulders. So when you have this shape here, it makes this area look wider because the emphasis is here. Once you remove that and you could see more of this shape coming through on the body, it makes everything look slimmer and more flattering and more proportionate. So if Sarah had maybe an additional 3 inches of hair and this was the skinniest part, this would be beautiful. So if you wanted to grow your hair out to just below your collarbone and then have the interior shorter layers, that would be really, really pretty for you.
And that's what I would like to do eventually, but yeah.
Okay, so we can, right, so, you know, what did I just do? I just took myself and changed my hair mid. So, but you know, you want to make sure, like, I don't really care if you're happy because I'm leaving and you're not seeing me again, but that's messed up. But you can see how these pieces, if they were just a little longer, how the shape would just collapse and get skinnier in here, and that would be really pretty. So how can I make it work without making it trim? Because if I just do a little tiny trim, it's not enough of a change, and I just met her, so I want to make sure that she comes back to me. So I need enough of emphasis on the haircut that she's going to say, oh my God, Marina did me good, I have to make sure that I come back to her. So if I just do a trim, it's not going to be enough of a change. So, okay, so what can we do? We have pre-existing length here that is very textured. So this will shrink up quite a bit because of the texture. So ideally, this really should be trimmed to just under my fingers because you can see how there are some shorter pieces here. On curls, as you know, when you remove weight, curls seem to let you shrink up, right? Because there's no weight to that hair. Plus, we have cowlicks in here. So by the time that length drops, it shrinks up and gives a ton of body right here, which is lovely if there was no hair here. So what we can do is we can layer the bottom. Take a look at the length here. And you can see all this length and all this extra length here in comparison to line technique, which is right here. And then the shorter length that's right here that's shrinking up. So if I connect the length from internal, the highest point of the head, to the lowest point of the head, then our silhouette, instead of going round like this and then coming out, this will all be shrunken together and look much skinnier and much more head hugging. It will also potentially flip here because there won't be any weight here. And I think in this situation, a little flip is okay. I think if we were going for like a bob, not so good. And then this way Sarah can grow this out. So your options are, we can do the original length that we talked about, which is going to be just a little below or above the shoulders. Clean it up, make it really strong so that it can grow really healthy and nice. Do a little gentle undercut so that as it's growing, it's not getting any heavier. Fix this up a little bit so it lays nicer, and then layer the sides a little tiny bit so it kind of makes it shrunken and a little softer. Or leave the length, do a little baby trim on the bottom so it's healthier. Work on making the back look good because the front looks better because you have the base and
Yeah.
not anything in the back. Yeah. So and then do the same thing with the fringe, and then just kind of reshape everything so it can grow longer.
Let's do the first option.
Okay, so the shorter one. Well then. So good, because doing the trim is not as fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so and I like that option too because it's super healthy, it looks great, and then you could just 3 months not do anything, and then you can revisit the overall looks. Okay, so all right, so now if we're going with a shorter length, my decision is going to be how heavy do I want my overall length to be. So there are 3 techniques to haircutting. We have line technique, we have layers, and we have graduation. All 3 of those techniques create very different end results, right? So we have a line technique, which is going to be the heaviest form of any type of haircut that you can do. Line technique is created when all the hair is combed at a natural fall and cut to the same plane. So if someone wants something very precise and very heavy and very strong, you want to make sure that you bring hair all the way down, and once you elevate that hair, you're no longer creating that line technique. So it's no longer going to be as heavy, it's no longer going to be as precise, and it's no longer going to fall off in the same plane. On finer hair texture, or hair that is perfectly straight, line technique shows up as a line technique and it's beautiful. On thick hair, wavy hair, frizzy hair expands. Line technique now looks like a mushroom, right? Because it expands, it gets bigger. So if I am cutting a decent amount of hair off, and I want my line technique to still be pretty on someone like Sarah's hair texture, I'm going to create a little tension. And creating tension is going to make it spring up a bit more than no tension. And what would the tension do to my overall shape? It's going to make it look softer because it's going to look more like a graduated shape, right? So instead of a line technique having a corner, it will look a little bit more beveled, which is going to be nice because then I can use that for my guide for the undercut. So when I'm doing the line technique, there are a few things that I have to watch out for. Body position, where is the client's face, right, and their chin is positioned down or it's parallel to the floor. Then we have where am I standing and where am I holding my actual cutting line. So where am I holding the hair right before I cut it. If you want a clean line, then combing hair straight down from where it grows without any elevation and any over direction, and cutting without your fingers is going to be the most ideal way. Do you feel like you're taking a shower here?
Yes, it's actually like a really lovely mist.
Oh, well, I put some essential oils in this water bottle to make sure that it's really durable here. All right, so I'm going to do the line technique with my scissors. I don't think I'll be using any razor today. How many of you guys are working with scissors most of the time, or do you switch from scissor to razor? Or mostly scissor?
Switch back and forth.
Back and forth, okay. What are your biggest challenges when it comes to cutting hair?
I would say that
Big question.
I would say that like consulting when someone is giving you nothing, or when they're like, I trust you, do what you want, and it's like,
Biggest compliment.
yeah, but
That's great.
also like, but what do you want?
Yeah.
You know?
I find so, funny story. I have a guy that works in my salon now who is from Russia. So I'm originally from Ukraine. He found me while he was still living in Russia, which is kind of insane. And he was following me on social media. And then he moved to New Jersey and applied for a job. And he was like, I've been watching you cut hair like overseas. And I'm like, that's really creepy. So what he's saying is you moved to America, to New Jersey to work with me. I'm gonna take it as that. And the way they cut hair, the way they do hair there is very different than it is in America. The experience, especially in Vermont, right? Like if you go into the cities and like in New Jersey, we have some high maintenance people, some laid back people, but most people are not laid back about their looks or about the service. It's a luxury service and they want to be pampered while they're in the chair. But I have a rule of thumb. If you can't figure out what a client wants, whether it's cut or color, in less than 5 minutes, you're gonna have a problem. Because if they are so indecisive and you're not speaking the same language, especially if it's a new client, then either they are so indecisive, they don't actually want a haircut, they just want the therapy session that we provide for them at no charge. Or you're just not speaking the same language. When I talk to Dennis, his name is Dennis, when I talk to Dennis, I'm like, dude, you gotta speed up your consultations. It's been like 30 minutes. Like, what are you doing? You're doing a trim. Like, easy. He said that in Russia, you do not walk away from a client, no matter how long it takes, until you know that they know that you know exactly what you're doing. And I find it really interesting because, like I said before, consultation is such a big part of a haircut, right? If your consultation is not good, you can do the most beautiful haircut, but it doesn't matter because for this person, it's not beautiful because that's not what they asked for. So I think leading questions are real good. I think doing, being a little bit, keeping the ball in your court is really important in the consultation, especially with new clients that are indecisive. Telling them what you think is going to be best for them makes the consultation that much easier because they trust you. They came to you for an advice, right? Like this is your job, and you're gonna say, I'd love to do a graduated bob on you, and she's like, well, I never thought of that, and we're like, well, I think it's gonna be beautiful for you because your jawline is very, it's beautiful, and you have this and that, and whatever is going to work for you, and so you're planting that seed. Or if you say, I want to do a graduated bob on you, and she's going to say, my mom has it, I definitely don't want a graduated bob. You already know she doesn't want any bobs. Just get rid of that bob from your head. So, and I also think pictures help quite a bit. Especially pictures from the social media, from your own social media. And even if you figure out what you don't want, that's already halfway there. Do you like this? No. Good. Now I know you don't want layers, or you don't want short layers, or you don't want bangs, or whatever it is. So, when we train in the salon, when I train my staff, consultation, we don't even go over consultations until like a year in. Consultation knowledge and the training, just listen to me. That's it. Listen to all 7 stylists that we have. And every time you listen to someone, you're going to pick up something. The way people speak, because I'm a trainer, everyone starts off the same, hi, nice to meet you, what would you like to do today? Is there something specific? And it's already, I'm opening that one. Do you have a picture for me? Because then, they swipe, you see all the AI generated pictures that everyone shows. Do you guys have that too?
Yes.
No one brings pictures unless it's AI generated. All right, Jake, how do you feel about getting some steps in with a cell phone in your hand?
Great.
So the first thing when I cut hair, we have a mirror. A mirror is going to be your best friend. I'm going to make sure that my client's head is perfectly straight. On shorter length like this, I'm going to tilt them down just a little bit. When you're tilting client's head, this chair is really mobile. It's really nice. It's really beautiful. So when client looks down, we're not only changing our horizontal shape, how the hair is going to be cut this way, we're also changing how it's going to look from top to bottom. So the farther down the client looks, the more you're changing the end result here. And if your challenge is balance, then don't have them look down, because the balance of the haircut comes from here to here. If I cut a straight line like this, and the client, while the client is looking down, when Sarah looks back up, it's going to be round. And the outside is going to be shorter, so I have to be careful. Right? So I'm going to make sure that my client is straight, then I'm going to have it tilt down just a little tiny bit. I'm going to watch for growth patterns. I'm going to watch how that hair, you guys see how it goes to the side a little bit? So if I pull on that hair and I create tension here, that hair is going to spring up and this side is going to be shorter. So I'm going to comb this down, tap a little tiny bit, see how that's laying, and then I'm going to just place the comb right where I want that cutting line to be. I'm going to cut the middle first. Now, because Sarah's looking down, I have to make sure that I leave the outsides of these areas a little bit longer, right? Because when the chin goes up, that line is going to go up as well. Here, I'm going to comb this down again. Comb it straight down. Let that natural texture do its thing. If the cape gets in the way, this is a very important spot. I'm going to remove it. And then from here, I'm going to angle my comb just a little bit so that I follow the cutting line that I want to see. Same thing on this side. Always stand directly in front of the area that I'm working on. So push it in, tighten it up right against the skin, hold the comb. The length on the outside is going to be a little bit longer than the length on the inside. Now, how am I going to cross-check this? Am I going to hyper-focus on every little hair that I just cut? No, because it's not such a perfect line, right? Because I didn't use the tension on it. I'm letting the natural texture sort of dictate, the natural growth dictate. So if I flatten this perfectly, there's going to be some hairs that don't belong. And that's okay. I'm going to get some of those hairs. One, if I blow dry it really smooth, and two, on my second section. When I take my second section, and I'm going to follow it up with the previous. Anytime we're doing a bob shape, which is going to be length above the I always take much smaller sections underneath the round of the head. So underneath the occipital bone, and then when I get to above the elbow bone, I can speed it up a little bit, especially if there's some layers here, and I know there's not much density that's going to be reaching. So when I get to this section here, I'm going to have you look down just a little bit more. And when I look down, when I have the client look down, this length is shrinking up, right? Because that hair has longer distance to travel. So I'm in a better spot to cut hair. Do you see how like the head shape goes in here, and then we have this, whatever the spine is called in that area? C4.
Right, like I can't think.
Yeah, so in this area, because it's a little curvature, it's hard to cut here. So I'm gonna have Sarah look down a little bit more, and because of the shrinkage of the length, now I can comb a little bit cleaner. So now as I'm combing this down, I'm creating more tension on the hair, I'm using the guide that I see underneath. Now I can trim up any lengths that sort of didn't belong. Now that length underneath, because it's a wider section, is still not going to be perfect, but if I left some random hairs that didn't belong there, I got to cut them off now. Now because Sarah is looking down even more, I have to be cautious here. I have to cut my line technique even more triangular, even longer on the outside, so that when Sarah looks up, it doesn't jump up with positioning of her head. So here, nice and clean, always standing directly in front of the area that I'm working on. Hold it, I'm going to place my comb right against the cutting line, and then remove that. Now again, I'm still not going to cross-check it. I'm not going to pull on that hair and see. What I want to pay attention to is where is that hair falling at a natural state, right? Because to be honest, you know Sarah's not blow drying this hair perfectly straight. It's not even going to be easy for a hairdresser to do it. So if the balance of the haircut looks really good here, I don't need to check it any more than it already is. Now here, let's see if I could speed it up a little bit by taking a slightly longer section. My sections are always going to be parallel to the cutting line that I'm creating. So a really, really slight triangular shape, so a slight diagonal section, going lower on the outsides and higher on in the middle, because I want my brain to not really have to think. I want to place my comb against the cutting line or against the sections and then just mirror that right there. I'm going to have to go down just a little bit more. If it's really thick, maybe even a wide side of the comb. But because I want to create a little extra tension, because remember, we want that line to jump up a little bit and be a little bit more graduated instead of perfect. I'm using the fine side of the comb, making sure that I see the guide right underneath. If I can't see the guide, I might take a smaller section. Now, sometimes we use our fingers to create that line technique. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it creates some challenges on the cutting line. If I use my fingers, for someone who's got a really voluptuous head shape, you like that word? It's a good word to describe a head shape. So what do I mean? The occipital bone sticks out, and then they're really petite, so it goes really in, and then just, and then the body. So that creates a lot of elevation that happens from the occipital bone. And if you follow the head shape as you're cutting that person's hair, it's going to take a detour. It's going to go from here all the way in and then here. So when you brush this down, that length is going to be much longer. Those are the people that you want to use your fingers for, because it's going to help you bring that straight down. Now, if I did that on Sarah, I would do the opposite, because Sarah does not have a voluptuous head shape. You have a perfect head shape. The occipital bone is perfect. It goes in just enough here, and then the rest of the body starts. So if I use my fingers, I would elevate this, which means the underneath would end up being longer than the length on my second section. So if the client blow dries and then pushes that hair down, you saw all of those imperfections in the haircut before, but look how clean that looks now. You would have length underneath that would be longer, and that would promote that bob to flip, which is the worst thing for bob to do, is to flip out. My husband's name is Rob, and he hates being called Bob, but there's always some kind of joke that I make about that in a class, and he thinks it's like such a stupid joke. This is big. Does anyone ever laugh? I go, yeah, pity laughs all the time. No. So it's, when a bob flips out, it's not good. See, pity laugh. Yeah. All right, I'm going to go down a little bit more. And you could see, like, I'm combing, and there's just the comb goes straight down, and it's nice and easy. So Sarah might not have the easiest head of hair to cut because it's pretty thick back here, but she makes up for it by having a lovely head shape. So thank you.
You're so welcome.
Whenever I teach classes locally and I'm doing a model and not without head, I always create, I always meet the model prior, because there have been situations you show up to a class and someone's got a mop head. Like, it is so much hair that I'm going to spend an hour just texturizing the hair just to make it look like a normal amount of hair. So, and then cowlicks and hairlines, and who the hell knows what else can potentially happen there. So Christine did you good by having a lovely model. I'm just gonna teach the entire day on this chair. Jake, how are you doing on the phone?
Great. Looks great.
Good. All right, so look at the, right, it's already falling so nicely. What a perfect length. You can look straight for me. And then gets a little bit longer, so we can tell that this length is good, and then this is where it starts to get heavy. I'm not gonna continue with the overall length. The line technique, I think, sometimes you could save a little bit of time by not doing it, and then just doing it after. I know exactly where my undercut needs to sit. If I continue doing the line technique, I'm recutting all that hair anyways. So, you know, work smarter, not harder, by not doing the same, or two haircuts in the same front of the head. So now, undercut, what is an undercut? Undercut is when hair is disconnected at one point from another. So why is it called an under? Because it's usually somewhere underneath the haircut. So if I cut this part of the haircut, or the vertical point of the head shorter, and then this length hovers over it, then I create an undercut. So, but before I actually do
So
that,
I thought an undercut was when it was shaved, and that's what I meant before.
yeah.
So if you want to increase the undercut, that's okay.
Okay, so shaved is just a really, really extreme
If you have a
version
hair
of an
elastic,
undercut,
would you
right?
Hair elastic.
So I have an undercut here, you can see a little tiny bit. So right in here, see how that line is a little bit shorter than on the top.
Yeah.
So it could be as little or it could be as significant. So if and I'm gonna take this a little bit shorter because I really want the undercut to be underneath the occipital bone. Right, so we're gonna go right from the widest point of the head. And the widest point of the head is always going to be a bone structure, which is going to be oval. I'm gonna clip this out of the way. Whenever I clip hair, I always try to keep it really clean and sections away or hair away from the sections, so I can always see this line in here. So now, I want to create length that's going to be shorter on the top and longer on the bottom. So if I take a vertical section, and to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to have Sarah all the way down. And then from this point, my elevation is going to dictate how much hair I'm going to cut off of the top section and how much length I'm going to keep on the bottom. Right, so if I lift all the way up here and I cut just this point right here, hair from here to here is going to be left alone, and I'm only going to have an undercut here. And how do you know how much you need to cut? You don't until you cut it and then you check it and you're going to see how it looks. So you're going to make sure that head is straight and then just tilt it down. Line is not looking to the side. And then I'm over directly, so I'm pushing hair directly back from where it grows, and then lifting all the way up to the ceiling. So I'm gonna go with here, I'm gonna drop that length, and I'm gonna see what happens to it. So and if I fluff it a little bit, you can see how it's shrinking up and making it skinnier. And you could see how silhouette right here looks heavy and comes out, and then this is collapsing it. So I think this length is good. I don't think I want to take any more off of the bottom. I think this is shrinking up nicely. So, you know, I got lucky on the first length. Sometimes I'll cut a little bit less, see how it's falling, see if it's still heavy on the bottom, but I like the length on the top. If I like the length on the top, but the bottom is heavier, instead of bringing it higher up, I'm going to bring it a little bit lower, so more of the bottom reaches my fingers. I try to think about hair horizontally and vertically. So vertically is from top to bottom. What am I doing to the hair when that hair falls? And then horizontally is what am I doing to my first section in comparison to the second section, and so on. So if I want that length to follow the head shape, I have to combine the two sections together, and I have to stand directly next to the section and over direct in the center of the two sections. So I want to create the length that's going to be the closest from left to right. And that's going to give me a round shape. So I'm going to bring this up towards the ceiling, follow the guide, drop this down, comb it down with straight hair. I would comb it like this. On wavy hair, a little bit harder to see. So I'm going to lift it, and I do this kind of like open fingers, lift it up, and then see how it's falling. And you can see that shape is falling beautifully. So on wavy hair, I know for sure this is going to look really, really good. On straight hair, it might need a little tiny bit right here. It looks like it potentially could be a little bit heavier. But if I cut that too short, that bob is going to, it's going to flip out. And you don't want a flipping bob. All right, so next section. Now I'm going to combine section 2 and section 3. Jake, can I have you a little towards my right?
Yep.
So that you can see a little more of the...
Yep.
That's good.
I'm good.
So from here, lift it up towards the ceiling. Find my cutting line. I want to make sure my cutting line is clean, and then drop it down. Now I'm approaching areas that are closer to behind the ear. What happens in that area, right? Those are red flag in that area. The red flag is the hairline goes up, and we have less hair, right? So the dreaded hole that we create. So we want to make sure that we don't take too much length off of here, because you can see the weight is already, I haven't cut it, and it's kind of falling already pretty good. So instead of over directing hair into the center of the two sections, I'm going to push that section, one section back. So if I did section 1 and section 2, put it together, 2 and 3, put it together, 3 and 4, I'm going to bring it to exactly the same place where I cut my previous section. So this way it creates a little bit more length, and I'll cut a little bit less hair off of that area. Now, if I was worried that I was going to cut more, then I could use points of that haircut as a reference, but elevate even higher, which means the underneath hair would fall out even more. Now, on the opposite side, we're going to do the same thing, except we're now going to comb the hair instead of away from the center, from the ear to the center. We're not going to continue the same way. We're going to go from the ear to the center, the opposite. And that's going to help me create, there's no hydraulics in here. Now on this side, it's going to help me create a balanced haircut. Now, this chair might be a little bit high for me to hold my fingers like this. So I could also do this. And as long as my over direction is correct, then the balance of the haircut is going to be fine. I could also continue working exactly the same way, just being cautious that I'm not bringing hair too far close to the ear, right? Because if I'm creating a little bit of length behind the ear and I push this hair away from me, I'm going to potentially cut this side short. So be very cautious. Maybe even comb it away to help me set that up. And then here's my guide. And then the last section, we'll direct that back a little tiny bit. Make sure it's nice and clean. Check for length, check for balance, check how it's falling. All right, if I'm happy, the next part is going to be taking my entire length from the top of the head, so my entire vertical shape, highest point of the head, to behind the ear. And the reason why I like to subsection this way is because I want to see exactly what the entire vertical shape of the haircut is going to be once I'm done with it. Put that out of the way. Let the hair fall. Now I can envision and see how much and where it needs to be cut. Can you guys, I mean, what a difference, right? Cutting that length. Look how long this looks in comparison. And even if I just get rid of the length, it already looks really good. So we might not need to do much work from on the top areas because the bottom is supporting the top. The shorter the hair, the stronger it is. So the shorter hair will always push longer hair. So if you have length on top that is shorter, it's pushing on the hair that's longer. And that's why Sarah's bottom looks so heavy, because the length on top did not connect to the bottom. So now here I'm using my fingers for that purpose that I was saying before, to make the line technique a little bit softer, a little bit more graduated, and so that I am not creating more length by letting that hair follow the head shape. So I'm bringing it straight down from where it grows, which means I want to create a little tiny bit of elevation, because if I brought this all the way down, it would have actually been longer because it has long distance to travel. Makes sense, yeah? Bring this down, still watching that the grains of the hair are all going directly towards my fingers. I'm not accidentally brushing hair towards the ear. Still want to make sure that I'm working precise and clean, even if I'm using my fingers to create a clean cutting line. All right, so let's assess again. It's amazing that you can't even tell that there's an undercut. The length is sitting really nicely. Now I'm going to do the same thing as what I did underneath, keeping it really simple. I am at heart a precision hairdresser, and I find that if I blueprint everything that I'm doing, it makes a lot more sense to me. And I find that it's easier to replicate a haircut if a client is happy than working more creatively and more visually. I'm definitely not a visual person. I think visually I see things that I like, but when it comes to actually doing hair, I have to be very meticulous when I do it. So if I make something really complicated, 30 different sections, different patterns in the haircut, I feel like I can't pay attention to all that. I have too many things going on. So I always try to make sure that I'm making it as easy as possible to follow my own steps. If I took a vertical section underneath, most likely I'm going to take a vertical section on the top. If it's vertical, I could also do horizontal because it's technically the same thing, it's just a different way to look at it. But if I have a diagonal section, I'm certainly not going to be taking a vertical section because those lines will never match up easily. So now, here's my shortest piece. Since it's an undercut, I definitely want to make sure that I'm not connecting it, right? Because now we have really some very short layers. So I visually want to connect, not to the length, but where this hair is going to fall once I cut it. And I want it to hide the length underneath. So now I have to make a decision. How much of the length underneath do I want to hide? Do I want to hide half of it? I'm going to cut to here. Do I want the length to reach all the way to the bottom? Then great, that's what I'm going to do. So if I cut just a little hint right here, when it shrinks up, it's going to come right to where that line is. So from here, I'm going to stand right in front, right next to my section, right behind the section. I'm going to bring hair parallel to the floor while my fingertips are pointing directly down. So I'm going to do a little baby trim on that length here. Now I'm going to bring this hair directly back still, but instead of keeping my fingertips directly down, I'm going to lift and I'm going to round that length just a little tiny bit. I want to make sure that I don't create too much of a corner, too much length right up here. So here's my length, and I'm going to bring this up a little tiny bit, and I get to cut that length just a little tiny bit so that it's healthy, but it's not much shorter than it was before. All right, so that looks really good. Now, my next decision is what do I want the lengths to do from the back to the front? Do I want it to follow the head shape, or do I want the length in front of the ear to be longer? If I was going for shorter to longer look, then it's easy. I know I have to make that longer to compensate for the length here. But if I follow the head shape here, and my length is the same, and my line technique, I'm gonna run out of, or I'm gonna able to add layers through here, which is gonna be good. If I over direct that hair back and create more length behind the ear, by the time I get to the ear length, I have nothing to cut, which means I'm not layering the front, which means that length is gonna be really heavy. So if I want my length to follow the head shape, I'm gonna take pivoting sections that's going to help me over direct hair into the center. So the same shape that I created underneath, slightly rounded shape, I'm gonna do the same thing on the top. Parallel to the floor, find your guide, make sure you're seeing your guide clearly. Elevate a little tiny bit higher, and as I'm elevating, my fingertips are going out farther away from the head. Now the beauty of a pivoting section is the top is the pivot point, which means the guide is already there, and you know you don't have to cut it again. So if you get to here, and you see some hair right on top, that means you're cutting something that probably should be left alone. And then I'm gonna continue, and you can see how my body continues moving around the head. So if it's moving around the head, that means I am creating lengths that are following the head shape. And the shape is gonna be round, which means the length in the front of the section and the back of the section is going to be about the same. Now when I'm getting to behind the ear length, I wanna make sure that I preserve a little tiny bit so that you don't create too much movement that's going to be behind, or not enough movement that's going to be behind the ear. So brush this, play with it, see how it's falling, and look at that shape. All right, so I'm gonna do the same thing on the opposite side. I take my first section, vertical section, that's already been cut. The next part is gonna be slightly diagonal, pivoting section, so that I could create a round shape. I should be checking every few sections to make sure that Sarah's behaving. And by behaving,
When people are like talking and moving a lot of the time, I have trouble like being like keeping people still sometimes.
yes. So I do this thing, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. If client is moving, I'll put my hand on top of them and I squeeze their head a little tiny bit. They don't know what I'm doing, but they feel that I stopped for a moment, and it takes their attention. Like, oh, something's happening. Let me pay attention to that. Now, if someone is really in the conversation and they're like the bobblehead, that will not do anything. So then I will stop what I'm doing, drop my hands down, and they will continue the sentence. And I say, okay, do you mind holding your head a little more still for me? Yeah. And that's like the more, I feel like that's a more aggressive way. Yeah. And because your hands are down and you're not actually working, and they're like, oh, what's going on over here? They actually listen to you. Yeah. I have plenty of clients better not be on here. So a lot of good stuff about clients. But I have a lot of clients that, just kind of, and you're trying to foil them, and you're like, yeah. So there have been moments that I've had to say, Susie, every fake client is always a Susie in my training days. Susie, I really need your head a little bit more still, because I'm either gonna cut you or cut myself. And when I say that, they're like this. I'm not even gonna breathe. Perfect. That's all I like. Don't pass out. So here's my last section. Slightly back, still following the guide that I've already created. And then as I'm going, I always check to see what it looks like. And I don't necessarily rely, unless it's a very much precision haircut, I don't always rely on cross-checking perfectly, because it's more important to see how the hair looks once it falls than what it looks like when you cut it. So you could see, here's my cutting line, and you could see how it's a little bit more rounded. It's a clean line, and it slightly kind of goes up like a happy face, following the curvature of the head. Now, if I didn't want it to follow the head shape and I want it to be longer here because we have, let's say, really fine hair texture and we needed to preserve more, instead of taking pivoting sections, or we're taking vertical sections and over direct it into the previous instead of into the center of the two sections. And then my cross check would have looked like a square cutting line. Now, at this point, I'm going to do a line technique, line check, beautiful. So here, I'm going to take a horizontal section, and I always do a line technique on both sides, first section on both sides. And then I do one side, because nothing is worse than doing a line technique on the entire side of the head. Wow, I did such an amazing job. Great job. And then I cut the second side too short. And now you have to redo the entire side. Is the lighting better on this side because the sun is not shooting it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Alright, so, yeah, it's good. Thanks guys. So here, we have the dreaded ear, right? The dreaded hole, the dreaded ear. I'm gonna get a stool. Isn't it funny, like when we cut hair out of our element, it's like, just throws you off just a little tiny bit. I'm like, I never sit when I cut hair, but for some reason I can't like see standing when I'm doing a line technique. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe the floors are lower than the line. Alright, so right over here, I'm gonna let this hair fall straight down to where it's falling on the shoulder. I want to try to create the least amount of elevation. So elevation is how much you're lifting off of someone's face or body or head. So I'm going to have Sarah look to the side a little bit more. And you see how that hair just falls down closer to her skin. So that's going to help me create the length that's going to fall the same on the top as the bottom. If you elevate, your length on the bottom is going to be longer than the top. So now here, I don't want to pull on that hair. I want that hair to rest where it belongs, and then I'm going to cut a line that's going to follow square shape. So meaning I want the length on the front, in the front, to be that the same as the length in the back. And then I'm going to do a little check, and then that looks good. So now I'm going to spin the line around, and I'm going to have you look all the way to the other side. So here I say chin up. Ooh, you're really flexible. So, especially because everyone's looking down, right? Everyone's posture is a little bit forward head posture. So I'm gonna make sure that your chin is straight, and I'm gonna check it, and then tilt your head towards your shoulder. So the same thing here. Actually, you're pretty good. Check my overall length. So let that sit exactly where it wants to fall. I'm going to place my comb where it belongs. And then here it is. Now this, I do check to make sure that we're looking good. And so if there's a mirror up front, I'm going to take hair from the front or from behind the ear, from the front of the ear, and then from the front hairline, and I'm going to check that the balance of the haircut looks good in the mirror. Because doing this to a client is a little awkward, right? Like I'm like right on top of her. They might like it. That's where I got all my tips. Yes, it comes with a comedy show, guys. I'm going to show at 10 o'clock exactly, I'm going to show my husband that people laughed in the class. Alright, so I'm a little tiny bit longer on this side, very, very little. So I'm going to check, but this length looks really good, which means I went a little bit longer than the length from behind the ear right here. So I'm going to go a little tiny bit shorter, very little, so I'm going to do a little tiny bit at a time. Cross check again, and if it's still longer, I can continue, but I want to make sure that I only do a little tiny bit. Now when I'm cross checking, I'm not just cross checking one area, because I want to make sure that I didn't make a mistake just on These little guys right here, it's coming from, and I have to find the area where it's coming from. All right, so we're looking good, which means I can continue with the rest of the side and without spinning the client and without moving too much. So we have another horizontal section. Bring this down. At this point, you can see how there's barely any hair reaching, so I'm going to save a few minutes of my life and then just bring this down together. So all the way to the other side. Here, I could start using my fingers to clean up that length a little bit more. And it is a little bit easier to see the guide when it's between our fingers, but this is only, I shouldn't say it's only okay, because you can do whatever you want. But it's better to use your fingers not on the first section, but above the round of the head. Especially on long hair, because at that point you're already cutting over the shoulders. It's not going to be perfect. There's always going to be some kind of discrepancies that will happen because of it. I'm going to tip it a little more so you guys can see. You know, the sun is really helping us. We're like glowing with the sunlight in our face. So, nice cut. This side is a little bit heavier, so subsections a little bit more. And then pretty much nothing's reaching here. All right, so the next step is to continue our movement from back to front. And a subsection from the top of the round of the head. Anything that grows from below the round of the head is going to be our line technique. If I cut any of the hair that grows from this region here, I'm going to take away the weight from the line technique, which means it's going to pop up, and it's either going to look shorter or it's going to have holes on the side, on the outside. So if you want a very textured and a lot of movement in your line technique type of bob, that's okay to do, but just know that it's going to follow the curvature of the natural hairline. Where the hairline goes up, you're going to have a bigger hole. Where the hairline goes down, you're going to have a long piece. So then you're going to have to clean it up a little bit. And on the finer hair texture, that hole is going to be pretty significant and it's going to be really hard to fix. So now on, Sarah's got a decent amount of hair, which is lovely, but we still want to keep that line technique pretty thick because that's going to be the support for the rest of the haircut, right? So it's almost like the foundation that's going to keep the rest of the haircut in shape. I'm going to check that the balance of the sections are good. I'm going to take a vertical section. Bring this up. If I work parallel to the floor in the back, and then lift it up a little bit higher, that's exactly what I'm going to do here. When I bring this to the side, I'm being very mindful how much hair is falling out in my cutting line. If I cut to here, then there's only a few inches of hair that's going to be the line technique. That's definitely not going to be thick enough. It's going to jump up. So I want to be a little bit cautious, and I'm going to bring it out to about here. So none of that hair reached, which means it's going to be nice and heavy and creates a little more movement. Next section, combine the two sections together. Same elevation and same finger angle. Next section, same elevation, I'm bringing to the same point. Bring the two sections together, same cutting line. And then for the rest, I'm going to bring it to the same spot where I just cut the previous section. And if I cross-checked it, it would be a square cutting line that gets a little tiny bit longer on the outside. I'm going to do the same thing on my opposite side. Something reflecting light. here, bring it out, same elevation. Here's my guide coming from the back. Before I continue, I'm going to check to make sure that the two lengths are dropping on the same points of the head. So I'm going to keep these two hairs right here. This is the highest point of the section, and I'm going to watch where that's falling. If it's falling in the same point, then I'm good. Because the only other way to check it is bring it up, right? And check for the lengths. But if this section is a little tiny bit longer, higher up, the length is going to be longer. So I don't want to be at a mercy of checking to make sure those sections are exactly in the same points of the head, because there's always going to be a little bit off. So in the middle of the two, here's my elevation, here's my guide. I'm leaving enough of the density on the bottom so I know it's safe. I have one more section. As I'm subsectioning, I'm bringing a little bit of the hair that I previously cut as a guide, and then merging it together with the section, with the new section. Grab the longest piece, check for balance to make sure that looks good. And then the next section, I'm going to over direct that back to preserve some of the length. Check the balance from the front. I'm going to gleam this on. Jay, can we come up this way just so that I'm not looking directly at the sun? So right over here, a little tiny bit longer. So I'm going to elevate. The length on the bottom is good. I'm going to bring this up a little tiny bit more so that I'm more balanced. Okay, now we're good. So tiny bit, but once it starts, it just keeps growing with each section, so you want to make sure that we're all good. Now here, we have a guide that's coming from the back. We have guides that are underneath, and we don't have a guide in the front yet, but I want that to be separate from the rest of the line. So my options, I could take either a profile section that's going to go from the back, use the longest piece here, create the shape that I want to see from front to the back. I could also take a vertical section, use the length underneath that I already created as a guide, and then bring it up like this. I find that using a profile section would work a little bit better and a little bit easier. So I'm going to take my first initial section, it's going to be right in the center of the head. Bring this directly up from where it grows. Use the longest piece coming from the back. Bring this all the way up. And then now my decision is going to be, do I want the length in the front to be a little bit longer, or do I want it to be parallel to the ceiling, so a square shape? If I create a square shape underneath here, I want the length on top to match to what I'm doing on the top. So I'm going to keep my finger angle parallel to the ceiling or to the floor until I get towards the front. When I get to the front, it's going to be, instead of here, just a little tiny bit higher, so that I preserve a little bit more length in here, so that I have more thickness, so that I can cut it in the fringe to the length that I actually want to see. Next section, I'm going to marry the two sections together, use the guide that I see from the back, use the guide that I see in between my fingers, and then move that all the way until I run out of hair to cut. When I get to the front, because everyone's got a little face frame or something that's happening there, you're going to have less and less hair to cut. Now in the last section, I'm going to go past the round of the head. I know for sure I already cut it, so there shouldn't be any hair that's reaching. And if there is hair that's reaching, that means my length on top is probably a little too short. All right, so the same thing on the opposite side. Now you guys can see my elevation, and here I'm bringing the hair. Another horizontal section. Marry the two sections together. I have a guide that's coming from the back and a guide that's coming from the opposite section. So here's my guide, and then right between my fingers, I see my other guide. Do you guys have any questions? And one more section here. Whatever's going to reach. Stragglers. And then I'm good. Alright, so I'm going to cross-check that in because I want to make sure the cutting line that I created on my third zone, my major section, and my second, which was underneath the third, I want to make sure that it's married together nicely. So I'm going to take a vertical section. Now I'm going to bring this right on the ankle, kind of right where the parietal ridge is. And right through here, I have a little tiny bit of disconnection because this hair underneath was brought at this elevation and then that hair was brought all the way up. So I'm going to have a little connection point. Now in the most perfect world, if I estimated, calculated, because it's not even an estimate, on where exactly I was cutting underneath and what my over direction was on top, they should match up, but in the most perfect world. Now, if you want to create more of a square shape, so for example, if I was not bringing hair to a higher elevation, but was bringing hair parallel to the floor, here, and then that corner, I just want to soften it. I don't want to get rid of it. In this situation, I want to get rid of the corner because the shape is going line technique, and then it's going from longer to shorter, and then rounded on the top. Now, if the corner is a little noticeable, so something like this, you want to get rid of it. If the corner is about an inch longer, let's say if I was cutting a decent amount of hair off, and the corner is significant, you want to fix the top. So potentially brought hair into the center instead of into the center of the two sections and created too much length in here. So once I cut that corner off, do you guys see how the length goes from here to here and then to here, and it kind of has a very fluid line. So that's what we're looking for. And then the corner, as we get to the front, is going to disappear because none of this hair is going to reach. A little strategy again. All right, so the haircut is done. The only parts that I have to do now is the fringe. Normally, I do the fringe while the hair is dry, unless the client tells me they never wear their hair straight. So I know Sarah wears her hair straight a few times a week, so I definitely want to blow dry them and then do a trim on them or reshaping afterwards. I don't think I need to blow dry the rest. I'm pretty confident this haircut is going to look great when it's straight because it looks the balance of the haircut and the shape of the haircut looks really good when it's wavy and it's shrinking up in all the right places. So I'm really only going to blow dry this part, not too straight, so I could see the movement, and then we'll go from there. All right, so let's move right over, Sarah, if you don't mind. I'm going to have it come right up here. if you do the front pieces and see how I'm kind of pushing the hair to the left and then pushing the hair to the right and then back and forth, that's going to soften how your scalp is falling. And then it'll listen a little bit. And then when you're styling, if you want it to bring kind of like a soft fringe, you want to place the blush in right in front of your face first. Give them nice and straight at the root, but a little bouncier. So you don't want it to be flat and falling on your face because I'm going to be annoying. Right. So roll the brush in, and back out, back and forth a couple of times. Make them nice and bubbly. And then you're going to place your brush instead of horizontally like this. You're going to separate where your natural part is. And then place the brush vertically, push it all the way to the opposite side. And then as you're pushing the brush out, you're going to come back to the side of where it goes to. And it's going to push to the middle, and then this is going to be out. All right, how do you guys feel about coming to hang right here? So this way,
Yeah.
you can see exactly what you're seeing here. So if I know applying blow dries the hair straight more so than not, most likely I'm gonna do that blowout straight-ish, check for the balance of the haircut, make sure it looks real good, because once they leave, if they are blow drying it straight and I have any imperfections, then they have to come back, I have to take more time out of my schedule to fix it, and it's never a positive experience. So I'd rather blow dry it on the straighter side, check it to make sure it's all good, and then if I need to do a quick restyle, then that's fine. If a client says, I never blow dry my hair straight, special occasion only, then unless they ask, like if today's the special occasion, I don't blow dry their hair straight, because it's not what they normally see themselves as, and there's no point of it. So I'm checking for balance, I want to make sure that the bob is laying exactly where I want it to be. The movement is good, and I can see how I'm fluffing out the hair, and I like the shape of it. So now, if I want to create length that's going to be around the face, that's going to be shorter in the middle, and then slightly longer on the outside. I'm going to pick up hair from the part right to the recession. Hold this hair at a low elevation. I'm going to have you raise your chin up a little bit. Bring this down first, and then to the opposite side. So I want to create a pretty severe short to long line, because I'm not sure how that hair is going to react, because it's right at the thinnest point of the head. So it might just shrink up quite a bit, and if it does, I want to make sure that it's long enough. So I'm going to bring it over, and I'm going to cut a line. It's going to be from short to long. Different scissors. And then push that hair back and see how it's falling. So I like where this is falling. I think that's laying nicely, but way too much hair here. So which means I over-directed way too far, preserved too much length. So now I'm going to bring this down again, use the guide that I already created here, and then by getting rid of more of that. So the only thing that I'm changing is I'm changing my over direction. I'm changing how far am I bringing hair away from where it grows. Still low elevation. I want this length to be as heavy as possible. Now, if this right here is laying really heavy and it's this on someone's face and there's no movement, I try to move it and it just like plops in their face, I'm gonna lift it up and create movement within that fringe. So which means that's going to layer the shape. I push it back and it starts to listen a little more. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Grab the hair from the recession, grab a little bit of hair right from the center, bring it over, cut a line that's going to be short to long, lift it up a little bit more, cut a line that's going to go short to long, just a little bit higher, and then check where that hair is falling. So I think this side could be a little bit shorter. I like where this is falling. This is kind of drooping down a little. So there's less hair on the side. So which means I have to over direct it a little less. And then bring it a little higher. Jake, how are you doing?
Great.
Is this
Looks
the most
great.
fun you ever had? Alright, so check for balance, check the shape. It's amazing how this curl is shrinking out. Now like where this is falling. So a few styling products that you can put in. So you have, I'm going to put a little leave-in conditioner to hydrate. What product line do you guys use in the salon?
There's Allura, Aveda, and that Intersects we just got.
Okay.
I use Kevin Murphy and Colton King and Arnco.
Okay. I find that I love Kevin Murphy using a salon too. I find they're kind of lacking natural texture
Yeah.
products. Okay, so I'd like to use something that's going to give me a little control and then a little texture, but only a little bit of texture because I think Sarah's hair has enough of fluffiness. Is that the word? Because he describes it really nicely, right? If I put too much of texture, then I think the hair is just gonna fly away, kind of. So this is trying out a new line. It's called Bob. It's called behind back of the bottle.
Oh.
And it's funny because it's B-O-B, but I'm like, of course it's Bob. Like, I can't wait to get all the merch and come home with a shirt that says Bob on it. But the line is extremely clean. So like, inner sense,
Yeah.
it's so clean. You can see every single ingredient. And this is what this company is all about. There's no hiding it. And unfortunately, like even Kevin Murphy is a really good, clean line, but because they put fragrance in it, and they'll tell you which fragrance,
And it's powerful. fragrance.
yeah,
really
it's
strong.
flagged that it's not a good, clean line anymore because, so this company is like, you want the full ingredient list? Here it is. It's right on the website. So I love that. I do find the products are really, really light, and I'm not used to that because I'm used to feeling products and I'm used to putting a little bit of products and it does something.
Yeah.
So, but I'm still playing around with this. The smells are amazing. The bottles, you guys ready? Ready? It's a glass bottle. And it's impossible to break. I've done this so many times and it's amazing. It does not break. Because when the sales rep brought me the product and the packaging was so nice, the aesthetics were just so good. And I open it up and you could see my face drop. I'm like, it's glass.
Yeah.
People hate glass because you could break it. She's like, you can't break it. And I
I just had
tried
a client the other day that didn't want to buy anything because it wasn't glass.
because it was not glass.
She didn't want any plastic.
What if it's, you got plastic that's like good plastic. They do all the good things to you know, hair industry these days, you know, we do a lot of bad stuff, but we offset all of it, which is amazing, right? Like, surf does a lot for the ocean. Okay, what else should I put? I don't have anything else.
Even glass is plastic in the pump. Anyway.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just pressing.
That's what I was just thinking. I'm like, would she?
It's only small, right?
Little plastic on the pump.
Okay, now put a little shine, no, put some, let's go with a little heat, frizz and heat primer. Sounds good? Sounds great.
It does smell good. What was the first product you put on? The dropper.
The oil, this guy.
Okay, it was just
it's a
oil.
moisturizing oil. So that one is so far my favorite. I don't have the full line just yet. You know, I just got a bunch of samples kind of. So it is really, really hydrating, but it's weightless. So you know, they break it down by how you feel, how much of the product you feel in the hair, and then how much it actually changes the hair. So if it's really light and you don't really feel it in the hair, but you feel it in the hands, it will break it down. So you feel that oil a ton. You put it in, the first time I did it, I'm like, look how shiny my hands are. And then you go like this and it just disappears and you do not feel it in the hair, which is amazing. I have, there's a texture spray and a hair spray that didn't fit into my cute little bag, so I didn't bring it with me, but I have probably half a can in my own hair. Hi, are you Christine?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. So, and you can't even tell that I have products in my hair, so I have the insane amount of hair. So it's really, really light, which I like, but then I want something a little heavier. And then we have a room as well in the salon, and I find that the is like your kind of go-to for all of the above. So with the hydration product, this is a primer that I'm putting on, and the primer kind of preps the hair and prevents from frizz, and I can twist and kind of place the hair where I want to see it. And then I'm not looking for like the tightest and the most perfect curl. I just want it to be less fluffy. And then I'm taking bigger sections because I don't want it to be too perfect. A little bit of product. So I'm gonna go with 1.5. And again, like super shiny hands. And then as I work through the product, it kind of just goes away, which is amazing. You guys do a lot of curly hair here?
I don't.
You don't, okay. Just choice, or you feel like your clientele doesn't?
Just clientele loves it straight.
Okay. Isn't it amazing how you have someone who's like 5 miles away from you that specializes in only curly hair, and they only have curly clients, and then your clients are like, I want curly hair. Yeah, it's amazing.
The stylist right next to me is a curly hair specialist. You can tell when she comes in, when her clients come in.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's nice. She's great. We have one of our stylists in the salon, as she was growing up in the industry, she's like, you know, I really want to specialize in precision hair and curly hair, which is like two opposites. Yeah, she has curly hair. You know, she's always been obsessed with the bigger, sexier silhouettes or curls. But I'm a precision hairdresser, so of course her education is going to be precision. And you know, little by little, she took classes, she played, she grew, and so she now will do like a perfect little, you know, precision bob, and then her next client comes in and it's like big hair, and they sit next to each other and it's like black and white. Like, it's so different. It's so fun to see. But one becomes very technical, and then the other one becomes totally visual, right? I find that cutting curly hair, if it's someone like Sarah's hair, someone that has Sarah's type of hair that's wavy, could be manipulated either way, I find that is the hardest, because you can't really approach it as curly haircut. You could approach it like a straight haircut, but then what if Sarah comes in and says, I want a curly haircut? And you know, like where you don't really have curly hair, you have wavy hair, and you have to make sure that your hair is perfect.
Right,
and
that's
it's
hard.
curly. I find that that is the absolute hardest because, I don't know, because you want to style them with their natural, you know, glory, but then Sarah goes home and blow dries her hair straight, and you got random hairs. And I find the amount of texture straight-ish hair and straight-ish haircuts need versus curly hair is very different. I've also seen pretty amazing hairdressers that do gorgeous, gorgeous work, do so much texture on curly hair that it scares me. How does this, I don't understand how this is even gonna work. And it does. Now what happens 3 weeks later when the hair grows out? Ooh, we are right on time. All right, so we have a few more sections here. So normally hair that frizzes up or expand, so I would have them sit under a dryer so that most of the moisture comes out without me touching it, because it's almost impossible to diffuse without touching hair. Well, you don't agree because you don't do curly hair, but if right, if you have a diffuser, you seem to touch hair a lot more. All right, so I have this lovely diffuser right here. Do you diffuse ever at home?
I haven't. Usually I let it air dry, I guess.
Because it looks skinny, right?
Or like, I had, yeah, it's definitely, it offers more definition, I think.
That diffuser is crazy.
Right.
The biggest diffuser in the world. Maybe, I don't know, I didn't do the research yet. Alright, so whenever I diffuse, I hover, and then I go up, and down, up, and down. And then always dry until 100% dry. Whether it's going to be rolling over, scrunching, you know, going in circles, however you're going to take the moisture out of the hair. At about 80% of when the moisture comes out, that's when it gets diffused. And then it starts to set afterwards. Hello. Yes.
Right.
Look at that curl popping up. Isn't it amazing? Like the shape is just so good. The natural color is so pretty too. That's here to highlight. Yeah, they look just a little bit. And then I'm gonna move around a little. Have you ever had a shadow haircut? Short bangs?
No.
When you go to length it out, like when your hair is a pass,
Okay.
that would be very cute to you. Have some short pieces in the front.
Yeah.
And that will wave up nicely. And it would be really easy to use style too. Because you can just stretch up and go. Yeah, and then I could use a couple of flips, so you can just flip your front pieces.
Okay.
And kind of place them where you want them to be. Yeah. And then just let them dry. Especially with hair drying, you want to set those long hairs.
Okay.
That should have them on too. Allura makes an amazing gel. You guys use it a lot apparently. It's so good. So we use curl cleaning. We have a couple of lines that have the curl cleaning. And then I cover with, I use the gel and just kind of cover a little bit here in it. So it's almost like a thin layer on top. And it really keeps the curl really nice and strong and tight. And then you can break it up afterwards and it's amazing. And then this is stuff where I'll get a little more aggressive with the diffusing because I want it to be full. Especially if someone is in your more on the curlier side, and this is how I would check for the balance of the haircut. I am certainly not afraid of putting hairspray in curls, especially if it's a lighter product company. difference in shape, right?
Yeah, the shape.
Such a difference.
Alright, so here's a couple of clips. These are called pink curl clips. I get them on like Amazon, and I buy huge boxes because they're not showing up on it. But, so they're really easy to open. So they have two prongs like this. So if you want this to go towards your face, kind of like a little swoopier little fringe, because that looks really pretty. And then the same thing here. I'm gonna hold that flat against your forehead like this. And then one clip is gonna go here. The other clip is gonna go here. You wanna make sure that you're doing this past your hairline, so when you brush this down, that's when you clip it. And then you let it dry. You can even do one of these, so these guys, so these kind of come out a little bit more. And then you do this one stay when the hair is damp, or after you style it. After you put the products in, but before you start drying. And then when you take them out, this will kind of encourage the hair to go exactly where you place them, instead of having a calyx of,
Determined.
yeah. Alright, let me show you the rest of the haircut. Not my salon, I'm not going to wipe it in France.
Yeah.
That's fine. Alright, so if you hold it like this, and then right to the
Oh,
side.
that's so cool. Yeah.
Right, so the shape looks beautiful, everything's kind of falling wherever.
Wow.
Yeah, and then the undercut is really, it's right over here, so these little guys are shrinking up a little tiny bit more, but you can't even tell.
No,
So,
yeah.
and as it grows out, this in here is not gonna get much wider than it is now.
Cool.
Yep.
It's great.
You can even shape it up a little bit more. You know, see the bottom, you see the shape.
Would you ever do like refining on the dry hair at the end, or do you usually just?
So on curly like this,
Yeah.
I think it's not curly enough for me to go in and find things that I potentially might not like.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if I was in a class, I would probably, because blow drying is straight hair, this would probably take me 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Most likely would have to flat iron it, and you guys would be way too
Right.
bored for that. So I would blow dry it straight, and
Yeah.
all my refining would be on straight. Now, if I was doing like really curly hair, then I do a dry on a natural curl when the client comes in with their hair clean. Then I do the shape, I restyle them, shake them up, make them big, and then check for the balance, and that's my refining. But I only like to do refining on hair that is in a state that I know I can control the hair and not make a mistake. Because if I find like on one side, one of the curl of this curl is not curling out, so I feel like it's longer. If I trim that, because it doesn't look good right this moment, when Sarah goes home and she's better at styling that side, now what did I just made a mistake? Yeah, because I know I cross-checked it when it was wet, so I know it's good. So sometimes, you know, the styling and how we style hair is definitely going to be tighter, bigger, more controlled of curl than what a client is going to do. You know, there's 20% of clients are going to style their hair better than we can because they know how to work their hair. But for majority of clients, you know, they're going to be skinnier, a longer and flatter version, which imperfections are going to come out much less than when you style. Yeah, you happy?
Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. It was really nice to meet you. You think you want to start diffusing your hair at home?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
Well, that is-
That was awesome.
Here is your present for you.
Oh my gosh, seriously?
Yeah. I made this, so it's my cross promotion for myself.
Oh, nice.
Yes, of course. You are very welcome. Enjoy it. All right, so shall we do a few minute break? And then we'll start our next live, and then Christine, gonna be here. So, how do you guys feel about just staying here? Because I think this is easier, right? All right, so,
Oh, you want to take it off?
yeah. All right. What do we do?
Do you need me to stay for
No, I'm all good. Thank you so much. Enjoy your hair, of course.
Christine says hi, and she misses you, and she sends hugs.